Wednesday night, me and my wife Stephanie were here at the church getting ready for kickback, which is on Wednesday nights for the teens. And I hear a knock on the door, and there's this guy standing there. He looked a little raggedy and stuff, so I'm like, oh, he's probably here for some handouts or something. So I opened the door and I asked him if I could help him. He's like, is your pastor here? And I'm like, well, I'm the student pastor here. I might be able to help you. And he's like, well, God has put something on my heart that I need to do, and so I'm going to do it. And I was like, okay. And he pulls out from his back pocket this little first aid bag, and he opens it up, and it's just full of cash. And he's like, God's told me to do this, and I need to do it. And I was like, well, is there anything that I can do for you? And he's like, well, you can pray with me. So I prayed with him, and he told me a little bit about himself, how he had recently come back to Christ, and how he wanted to do something big with the life that God had given him. And so he left. I had no idea what to do. So I called Grant, and my voice had probably raised, 4 octaves. When I'm on the phone with Grant, I'm like, this guy just brought some money. You need to get here. And I think Grant maybe thought he dropped off $100. We start to count it, and there was $14,800 in the bag, which is crazy because the same day the church had decided to do this big push with sending out flyers in the mail, which would cost the church $14,900. God uses unlikely people. He puts people in places to do huge and mighty things. I've never seen this guy before in my life, and I haven't seen him after that. And here God used him to ultimately reach tons of people downriver and do a big, awesome thing.
Morning. So fun to have the power on this week and be in the light. Very, very exciting. Just like to welcome you. If we haven't met yet, my name is Grant. And I just want you to know, as we wrap up the Greater Than series, that you are specifically and purposefully designed by God. I need you to really understand that, because when I first became a Christian, I would hear people say that, and a lot of times it was people like my mother that would say that, and I'd go, that's nice, Mom, right? That's cute. God made you for a special purpose, right? And I would just hear that, and I'd be like, yeah. But I want you to know that that is exactly what God has done. And whether you feel like you have worth, or whether you feel like you're useful in God's hands or not, your life is very much created by God to do His amazing work. Your life is kind of like this. Yesterday, I didn't watch any college football. Oh, yeah, because my hot water heater went out yesterday. So, hot water heater went out at like 11 o'clock. Well, the basement's starting to flood and stuff, so we get that all cleaned up. And my wife turned and she said, we should probably have somebody install a hot water heater. And I was like, that was really weird, because she usually trusts me. And she was like, well, it looks like there's going to be welding and that kind of stuff. And I just think we ought to hire somebody. And I was like, hot. To date, I have never hired anybody to do anything, and I'm not going to start now, right? So I'm like, how hard could it be, right? So we get in there and take the old one out, just like repairing a stove, right? And then you put the new one in there, and the new one's not the same size as the old one, and so now you got, some issues, and so we started doing everything, and Bethany was like, we should probably call somebody. Do you think John's available? Big John here at the church. Do you think maybe he can? And I'm like, I got this, right? No problem. So we get in there, and I tried to hook it up one way, and I'm like, no, I'm going to need to cut it loose and do some soldering and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, I don't know if she'd do that. And I was like, she has no confidence in me, right? So I sneak off to the back room and watch some YouTube videos on how to solder, and I'm like, oh, I can do this, baby. I've done this a lot, and so figure that out, and I have to go buy a torch and everything and get back there, and we hooked this whole thing up. It took me it was like 9 o'clock at night. I started at 1 o'clock and had to run to Lowe's 5 different times. Don't you love that when that happens? And probably spent the amount of gas that, that money to actually hire somebody to do it. Anyway, get all this done, 9 o'clock at night, get the gas hooked up, and we turn on the water, and there's no leaks. And I'm like, see, I can do this, right? Looked at her like, well, you should have had confidence. Then we get down, and it's one of these electric clicker, all we got to do is light the pilot. You can hear the gas running, click, 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 click. Nothing. Get in there, and there's this little window that they let you look in, and you get in there, see, click, 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 click. No spark, no spark. I'm about to cry, right? Okay, I'll go ahead and admit it. I broke down like angry balling. I angry ball. So I'm looking at this, and I'm clicking it, and nothing's coming on. I think a little water got in there or something, and I'm like, hey, let's go get out of the house. So we went and gotten some ice cream. When I come back, it'll be fine. It'll work, and everything's in there. Come back, it's not working. Whole thing's hooked up. There's gas running to it. There's water in it. Everything's hooked up into everything else in the house, and all we need is this little spark, okay? And then there's this big shield on the front that says, do not remove this plate. Because I'm thinking, all I need to do is get fire in there, right? Big thing says, please do not remove, if you remove this shield, you will have to have it replaced with a factory seal. Do not remove this plate. Do not remove this plate. So I removed the plate, obviously. Took a lighter and stuck it in there and, thinking I might die, but it's worth it, right? To prove my wife I can do this, and get my lighter in there, and the whole thing lights up, not like boom, but and we had hot water this morning. It was very exciting. Your life, and I put the plate back on, and it seems to be working fine. Maybe expert, we might die, I don't know. So anyway, that's your life. You're like, what? Here's what you are. God has created you and designed you and put you together and has put some very powerful gifts and abilities in your life. He has connected you to the rest of humanity, and all He needs from you is just a little spark. God's looking in that little window, and He's looking into your heart, and He's like, I just need you. I don't need you to do hardly anything. I just need you to take a step. I just need your want to. I need your heart to be on the same page as my heart. And if you can do that, I will take care of the rest. I will work in you in very powerful ways, and I will light a fire in your life. But all I need from you is just this little spark. So I want you to imagine that God is like a 300-pound man on the floor looking in the window of a hot water heater, okay? It's probably a close depiction. And He's looking into your heart, desperately wanting to see that spark. And He could. He could open up your heart and He could manufacture a spark, but He doesn't do that. He wants that spark to come from you. Now, my whole day yesterday feels completely redeemed because I was able to get up here and tell that story. Because of that's who God is. Now, let me explain, and this is what we've been doing through the whole Greater Than series. We've been trying to explain what that spark looks like. And we've been using Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 to describe a shift that God wants to see in your life. You should, if you've been coming for the last several weeks, should probably have this memorized by now. It simply says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others greater than yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. God's looking in your heart and He's like, if you could just stop living your life for you. If you could stop being focused on you. If the world could just quit revolving around you, and if the world began to revolve on other people, that's the spark I'm looking for. And if you can do that, I'm going to do amazing things in your life. He just needs us to let go, to take that step, to have the want to. Now, today we're wrapping up this series, and I want to make a point. We've talked in several different areas, and today again I want to come in a very practical way, and I want to say that God actually needs you. He requires your assistance. Sometimes we think, oh, God's got everything figured out, and He does things, and He works miracles, and He's got the whole world figured out. He doesn't really need me. I need you to understand, for whatever reason, I don't even know if this is very smart, But God requires you. You are a valuable piece in God's equation. I don't know why he does this, but he needs you. Jesus shared his heart, and you really get to see the heart of Christ in Matthew chapter 9. In Matthew chapter 9, you get to see how much you're needed. Verse 35. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God, and healing every disease and sickness. So Jesus is wandering around doing it. I imagine some of the disciples were following around behind Jesus going, man, look at him. He's doing it. He's got it taken care of. All we got to do is follow him around, and he's going to do it. Verse 36. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. You ever go to the mall and feel that way about, well, teenagers? You ever do that? I don't know. I've done that before. We go to the mall sometimes, and I'm a people watcher. I enjoy just watching people. Anybody else do that? Not in a creepy way, but like just enjoy like watching people walk by. And you see not just teenagers, but people that are 30 and think they're teenagers. And you're looking out in this crowd, and you just feel sorry for them because they're all so desperate to look just right and be just right, and they so care what other people think about them, and their hearts are heavy, and I just feel compassion as I see people. And it doesn't really matter what crowd you go to, you feel sorry for people. You ever been to a Lions game and feel sorry for, well, you always do. But anyway, there's a lot of times where you see that compassion. That's what Jesus was. He looked at the crowds, and he knew what they were missing, and he knew how they were treated, and he just looked at humanity, and he was filled with compassion. Then he said this statement. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." Think about what a heavy statement that was, because really, Jesus was the only one doing anything. He was teaching, he was leading, he was healing. And then he turned to them and he said, the harvest is plentiful, it's ripe, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Now, that's one of those passages in the Bible that's always kind of jumped out at me because, as most of you know, I grew up in a farm in northwest Nebraska. We raised corn and beans and wheat and barley, and we had a lot of crops. And it's interesting because you spend the whole year investing in this crop. And you've got a lot of time. You've got several months, where you're planting and you're working through the fields. And I remember many summers spending all day long walking up and down these bean rows and pulling and hoeing weeds along the way, and just at the end of the day, nothing to show for it but a dirty hoe. And anyway, so get to the end of the year, and you've worked so hard on the field and you've done everything you possibly can, and then you get to harvest time. And harvest time is just, you wait for it patiently. You've got the tractors fueled up. You've got the combines fueled up. You're ready to go. And Dad would go out there, and he would, whatever crop it was, he would roll the wheat in his hands, wait for it to be just right. Or he would go to the corn, and he'd pull back the husk and make sure it was dry enough. And every day he'd go out, and we'd wait patiently. We're like, is it time? They'd be like, not yet. We'll try again tomorrow. We were excited about it because we knew we got to stay out of school for a week when it was harvest time, right? So we were very excited about it. And then that day, Dad would come back and say, it's time. And all of a sudden, we would just go like crazy. I would jump in the truck, and my brother would get in the combine, and Dad would... He watched a lot of football during harvest time. But anyway, we'd all get really excited, and we would hit it, and we would work around the clock to bring it in. Why? Because there's a small window there. There is an urgency there that if you don't get it done in time, if the snow comes or the crop spoils in the field, then it's just gone. That's what Jesus is saying to his disciples. He's looking at the crowds. He's saying, look, the harvest is ripe. It's there. You don't have to find it. You don't have to create. All it needs is workers. All it needs is for somebody to go out there and bring in the harvest. Now, let me connect that to the harvest that we have. Because you're not talking about wheat and corn and beans. You're talking about human beings. And there's a lot of people that are really excited about a lot of things in our culture, right? I mean, if you get on Facebook, you watch the news, you just check things out, there's people that are excited about stuff. And what are they excited about? Well, people are very passionate about, like, for instance, health. I'm not even going to ask you to raise your hands, but there's a lot of you that are really big health kicks, right? And you work out. That's not a bad thing. I could probably be in the gym more than I am, which is not at all, right? I could be more a health kick. Sometimes you're posting constantly how Diet Pepsi is going to kill us all, right? And there's something that causes cancer and about everything. People get very passionate about curing diseases. How many people did the ALS challenge? How many people did that? I know there had to be more than that. Okay. You did the ALS challenge, and you dumped the ice bucket on your head, and people got passionate about that. A lot of money was raised, and there's a lot of people out there trying to cure a lot of diseases so that people can stay alive longer. And then my kids, this is kind of a funny one, my kids come home from school, and they curse the name of Michelle Obama, but not for the reason you might think, because their food is all of a sudden healthy at school, right? And they hate that. And there's people passionate about so many things in this world. I wanted you to get a taste of how important our mission is and how unique what the church does is. This is our harvest. I want you to check out this video real quick that explains kind of why our mission is so important.
In life, you have choices, the healthy and not. And sometimes it's tricky to choose what you ought. So if you are wondering what makes you ill, it's easy to know because everything will. A is for alcohol, source of addiction, liver diseases, and other afflictions. So how about water? That might be okay. But if it's in plastic, there's B, BPA. C is for corn syrup soda pop uses, and also for carbs found in sugary juices. D, dehydration. You still have to drink, though all these beverages seem like they stink. Eating too little or too much to count. E is for eating imperfect amounts, and eating some things that you shouldn't consume, cause dozens of dishes will lead to your doom. F is for fried food that's filled up with fat. Gluten for G, if you buy into that. H is for hot dogs. Who knows how they're made? I for insecticide. Veggies are sprayed. J is for jerky with way too much salt. And K is for kale. It's also at fault.
But isn't it healthy?
I'm glad that you asked. Cabbage and kale make thyroids too fast.
Forget about eating. I'll just go outside.
But that is where even more dangers can hide. L is for Lyme disease, carried by ticks. Malaria, M, that mosquitoes inflict. N, N-diethyl-toluamide. It kills all the bugs, and it kills your insides. O is for oxygenless recreation. P for pollution in each inhalation. Q is for quicksilver. Fishing is wrecked. R, deadly radon. That's hard to detect. S is for sunscreen, but also the sun. Both give you cancer. Now, isn't that fun? T for tobacco, UV for UV. W, watching way too much TV. X, as expected, is X-ray. Y is surprisingly yerba mate. Z is for zealotry, any insistence that you found the key to eternal existence. You can't avoid danger, just go on and try. No matter your actions, you're still gonna die.
Now, isn't that happy? Isn't that exciting? It's going to happen, right? 100% chance. I don't care if you drink Diet Pepsi or don't drink Diet Pepsi. You're going to die. And our mission is the only mission that prepares for that. The harvest for us If our crop spoils in the field, that means that people die and go into eternity without ever knowing Jesus Christ, their Savior. We cannot let that happen. We cannot let the crop spoil. The harvest is ripe. It just takes the workers. And so, Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, hey, pray for the Lord of the harvest. I feel like that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I feel like he's turning to his disciples and they're like, yeah, we need some workers, so, maybe you guys should pray for some workers. And I feel like the insistence is, hey, guess what? You're the workers. And God has created you, and he has designed you, and he has prepared you to do his work. And all he needs from you is a heartfelt, deep down decision that this is going to be the mission that you're a part of. He just needs that spark from you. So today, what I want to direct your attention to is that we have this opportunity here at LifeBridge. We have the opportunity to be a mega harvester, a machine that goes into downriver and across the world, reaching people in a massive way. And why I say that, my brother's a big-time farmer up in Nebraska. He farms like 3,000 acres, and he's got an obsession. He has to have the biggest John Deere combine they make, right? Doesn't matter whether he needs it or not. He will just go out the next day if they come out with another one, and he will buy the biggest combine they have. This is the combine he has. It looks a lot like this. I don't know if you can tell the head on that combine. See where that black wall ends there and that white wall and the black wall? It's about 2 feet wider than that. So this thing, when it's going down the wheat field, it is bringing in stuff like crazy. He can bring in, it's got GPS. He can actually sleep while it's operating. He just has to turn around at the end of the field. So different farming than I grew up to. He can do in 20 minutes what it took guys back in the day when they did this by hand. He can do in 20 minutes what it took guys an entire week to do. This thing is a mega harvester. That's how we view LifeBridge. If every piece of the puzzle is working together, we can come together and go out into the harvest and we can just go down the row and bring people in. It's too ripe and there's too much to harvest for us to do this slowly. We've got to go in and get it done. Now, what's that going to take? That's going to take, and hear me on this, there's two things that are always so important to any decision that you make as a human being. If you're going to make a big shift in your life, if you're going to go from benefiting from the love of Christ to imitating the love of Christ, you have to do two things. You have to stop something and you have to start something, right? Any shift in your life. If you're going to change, you got to stop doing something and you got to start doing something. So here's what I want you to do today. I just want to give you something to stop, and then we'll talk about something to start. So here's the thing to stop. Stop going to church for yourself. Stop going to church for yourself. Now, here's what I mean by that. This morning, you probably woke up and you decided whether or not you were going to go to church based on whether you felt like you needed to, whether your schedule was open, and whether you were in the mood to, right? Those were the three determining factors. Whether you needed it, whether you wanted to, and whether your schedule was open to do it. That's kind of how you decide to go to church. Because many of us pick church, and I said this at the beginning of the series, I want to reiterate it. Many of us pick church the way we pick our favorite restaurant. Right? You go in and you base it on consumeristic mentality. Do I like the music? Do I like the preaching? Do I like the children's ministry? Is it going to be a good thing? That's not a bad thing. That's what we do. We go to church and we look at it and we say, okay, is this going to be beneficial for me? But somewhere along the lines, after you put your faith in Christ, your mentality needs to completely shift. Do you know there's only one passage in the Bible that tells us to go to church every week? Only one passage. If you grew up Baptist, you've probably heard this passage before. There's only one passage in the Bible that tells us to go to church every week. And do you know what the reason is? It's not for you. It's not for it's beneficial for you. It's actually, they tell you to go to church so that you can encourage other people. Here it is, Hebrews chapter 10. And let us consider, this is the key verse for why you should go to church every week. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. The mentality of the writer of Hebrews was, hey, don't stop meeting. Why? Because you need to be taught and you need to be fed. No. He said, don't quit meeting. Don't quit going to church. Don't quit being around other people who are trying to do the work of God. Why? Because you can be of benefit to them. Now you might be sitting there going, well, how does that work? How does just showing up? Because I would encourage you to do that. For this year, we're getting ready to go into what I call harvest time, where you see people coming back from vacations and the attendance of the church is going to start to go up, and you're going to see a lot of opportunities in people's lives, and this is what I call harvest time. There's a lot of people that are going to come every week, and they're looking for a connection. A couple of weeks ago, I had a week off, so we went to another church. That's what I do when I have a week off. So we went to another church, just as a hobby, and as we went to this church, this is the 8th fastest growing church in the United States. Right? So we went to this church, and I got to tell you, it wasn't bad, but it just felt like it was an off day for them. Like the music was okay, and the sermon was okay, and I'm used to really good sermons, and so they, it was just okay, and because I listened to other people anyway, so. Everything was okay. The children's ministry was okay. The check-in system was a little bit dysfunctional. I mean, honestly, if I was just a person looking for a church, I don't know if I would have come back. And we sat down in a row, and we listened to everything, and, it wasn't bad, and people were friendly enough and stuff. And then we stood up at the end, and a lady whipped around, real nice, real sweet. And she said, hey, are you guys new? And I said, yeah. First week. I always pretend like I'm an atheist or something when I go to a different church. So it's like, yeah, this is our first week. We're just, checking things out, And she was like, oh, well, you'll love it. And then here's what she did. She apologized. She was like, yeah, the sermon wasn't very good today. And the music, I don't know what was up with the music. And she just went all the way around the line. She was like, but this is really good. And my life has been really changed since I've been coming to church here. And I hope you'll come back next week. And I got to tell you, if it wasn't for her, we would have walked away and gone, that was okay, I guess. But because of that one person, she all of a sudden became the face of the church to us. And we went, wow, God's doing something here. And I know this may seem hard to believe, but we might have an off week here. We might have a week where maybe the music isn't firing on all cylinders and somebody else is preaching. And children's ministry, I don't know, whatever. We might have an off week. We might have like a grouchy, grumpy greeter at the door or something. And somebody's going to walk in and they're going to be like, they're not going to feel it. And it's going to be your opportunity. I just want to challenge you to come to church, not for yourself, not because you need it, but come to church for other people. Second opportunity along that lines, coming up on Wednesday night, you might have noticed there's a card in your chairs there. That card is for a thing called Multiply. We are going all in for this. We are like putting our life groups on hold. We're asking everybody to come to this. It's on Wednesday nights. We're going to have a meal at 6:30. We're going to have teaching at 7. We really want to do some more teaching. We want to encourage you guys. We want to go through a deeper teaching and discipleship and stuff like that. But here's what we want. We really want people in this church that just come to church here and don't really know anybody, or maybe know people a little bit or something like that. We really want people to get connected, to get to know other people. And you might sit there and go, well, I don't know if I need that. You might look at it very consumeristically and go, I'm not sure that that's going to be beneficial to me, so I might come, I might not come. We need you to come, not for yourself. We need you to make connections, to reach across the tables, to welcome people in. Because there are many people that go to LifeBridge and they just show up on a Sunday morning and then they walk away, and that's all church is to them. And they like it, But church is so much deeper than that. It's about the community of believers. So stop going to church for yourself and start going to church for other people. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start. That's the thing you stop. The thing you start using your gift. Start using what God gave you. Start using what God gave you. And you might sit out there going, well, I don't know if God gave me anything. Yes, He did. I'm not sure what it is, but God has given you something. He has created you. He has designed you. He has made you for a purpose. And He just needs you to have a little spark, to take that and unselfishly be able to offer your gift, and He'll take it from there. In 1 Peter, it says this, the end of all things is near. Again, the New Testament is always super urgent. The end of all things are near. Anybody been watching the 5 o'clock news recently? Seeing the news? The end of all things may be near. Hope so. Therefore, be alert and of sober mind so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful steward of God's grace in its various form. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. Next verse. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To Him be the glory and power forever and ever. Amen. So we have a really easy opportunity. If you want to stop going to church for yourself and you want to start using your gift, when you go out those doors today, we've got our ministry expo set up. There's several different opportunities. There's several different ways to get plugged in. We need video production. We need graphic arts. We need worship people. We need people in children's ministry. We just need workers because the harvest is ripe, and we need volunteers to make that happen. And so again, we want to come to you and challenge you to just ask yourself this one thing. Will you consider others greater than yourself? Let me pray for you.